Yeah, Insider Nick Friedell. Insider calls are brought to you by the all-new Hyundai 2024 Santa Fe equipped for adventure. Listen, cousin Nick, it's good to have you on today, man. First of all, let's start with this. Spinoni in for Shasky. Pat Riley. Oh. And I love when the Godfather speaks because he doesn't speak often. But boy, did he speak yesterday. Tyler Hero, yeah, he's a bit fragile. Jimmy Butler, probably should just play and not talk too much about Pat Riley was in rare form yesterday, Nick. Good morning to you, by the way.
B is Spadone. It's great to be with you all, first and foremost.
What's up, buddy?
As far as Riley goes, he's basically the only person left in the league who would say that kind of stuff. And he has the respect within that organization specifically to get up at those press conferences at the end of the year and speak his mind. I remember it was either last year or the year before he was challenging Ira Winderman, who has been one of the writers down there for like 30 years. He challenged him to a push-up contest. So, anything can happen as far as Pat Riley goes in the moment, and we saw another example of that. But specific to the Jimmy stuff, I thought it was really interesting because what it means clearly is that Riley was really pissed off at Jimmy for creating that video or having it be taped, and he's been upset that he hadn't been able to stay on the floor. Now, the Heat aren't close to the two finals appearances they made in the last few years without Jimmy Butler, but if you're trying to read between the lines, you wonder if Riley's saying that publicly, what is he saying privately, and does that factor into whether or not Jimmy is going to stay there at least for a couple more years?
Spinoni, I love that Riley went out there like
he's
that.
The best.
I love that.
That hair, the Gordon Gekko lifestyle. Yep. I love me some Pat Riley, and it's true, so true, Nick, that he's like a dying breed right there. Like, you don't see that I could not imagine any other GM going at their star player like Pat Riley did with Jimmy Butler there and putting him on notice, but he does have the respect around the league. I want to get your thoughts before we get into the offseason and what's going on with potentially the Magic and Klay Thompson. What has been your main takeaway or story right now in the playoffs? Because it's me, Bonte and I have been talking about it. The young guard is here to take over right now, whether it's Anthony Edwards, whether it's Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, Luka, Kyrie, Jalen Brunson going off. We know about Tatum and Brown. What's been your overall takeaway of the playoffs thus far, Nick?
I think it has to be Ian Edwards because, Spadone, when you see the way he's performed in these spots over and over again, and the way he's given belief to the rest of the guys on that team, I thought he was going to be really, really good. And all three of us had those conversations back the last couple of years. If only he had fallen to where the Warriors were at.
Don't remind us, Nick. Don't remind us.
Well, exactly. Like, if it just, he would have fit, and it made so much sense that his game could have had the growth and been the bridge that everybody wanted it to be out there in the Bay. It didn't happen. The Timberwolves made the selection, but I'd be lying to you all if I thought that I saw this, especially just a few years after being selected number one. He has been unbelievable. His confidence is growing, and you can tell with the way he's playing that he's making everybody else around him believe. And certainly, guys, they're not the same type of player, that's clear. But what it reminds me of from a distance is watching Derrick Rose in Chicago. Because when you saw Derrick and the way he performed, there were nights he'd do stuff, and you'd look at the bench, and you'd be like, these guys, they're going nuts because they know. And then we know with the knee injuries what happened, everything changed. But that's what I'm seeing as I watch this Timberwolves team come into its own, and who knows what's going to happen the rest of the series and beyond. But to me, Anthony Edwards is the story of this postseason so far, and he continues to show just how dominant he can be in stretches.
Well, and I'm glad you brought that up, Nick, because you used to do a lot of shows here, obviously, with us on here. And then it was during that pre-draft process back in that pandemic season, right, when you had LaMelo Ball, you had James Wiseman, and obviously Anthony Edwards going number 1 overall out of Georgia. And you remember the conversations around Anthony Edwards back then? Doesn't care, likes football more. You know, Steve Kerr said he worked him out. Oh, yeah, Steph does this in his sleep. I mean, you have a long ways to go. If we had the number 1 pick, we wouldn't have taken you. I think that was just a little motivation factor for him because he knew that they weren't going to be able to get him. But those pre-draft analysis and stuff like that, and then I see a player that is clearly going to be the face of the league. Hell, maybe by the end of this postseason run, I just got to laugh every time. We just had the NFL draft with some of these things, and whether it's coaches, whether it's media leaking it out there for other teams to try to get them in the fall, it kind of pisses me off, actually, when I hear stuff like that, and I see the level of player he's become now.
Well, Spadone, what it reminds you and what it should remind anybody listening to us right now is the truth of the matter is nobody really knows anything for sure. I mean, that's just reality. Nobody knows. It's why I laugh, and we just saw the NFL draft, obviously, a little while ago, and they're passing out grades, and you're going, oh, this guy doesn't really fit here, and this guy, this was a reach. Nobody knows. You just don't know. You've got to let the process play out. And in the case specifically of Anthony Edwards, nobody thought that he could turn into this type of player a couple years into the career he's building. He has done it. I don't think anybody thought that Wiseman, to use the Warriors example, could be this type of bust this quickly.
Yeah.
And he was. It just didn't happen for him. And LaMelo, obviously, he's been hurt, so he hasn't been able to show exactly what he wanted. But it's all of these sports. There's so much hype around the draft, but you just have to take a deep breath sometimes and say, all right, let's see where this goes a few years from now. If you're a Timberwolves fan, it couldn't have worked out any better, though, because what it has done, and it's very clear in the way the postseason has worked out and beyond, he's become the face of this team, and it was a face change that they needed desperately because Towns, for as talented as he's always been, he was just never that number 1 guy. Anthony Edwards is, and there's a reason why Minnesota has the momentum that they do.
No, you're spot on there, Nick. You're so spot on there about the Karl Anthony Towns line. Anthony Edwards is more equipped for that role. And you saw the way somebody in our YouTube chat is spot on when they said the way Karl Anthony Towns looked at Anthony Edwards after Game 3 at Phoenix when Ed said, just stop fouling, dude. Stop fouling. We need you on the court. And Cat was basically like, yeah, you're right. You're the leader of this team. I need to listen. By the way, Nick Friedell on the line. He's an Audacy NBA Insider. Of course, Insider Calls are brought to you by the all-new Hyundai 2024 Santa Fe, equipped for adventure with capable features like available H-Track, all-wheel drive, and standard third-row seating. All right, real quick, before we get to Klay Thompson, real quickly, is this Minnesota's title to lose? Because I'm having a hard time envisioning some team left in these playoffs that could beat them 4 times in 7 games.
They're built in such a way where you've got to really believe exactly that, especially with the way they've come out and just dominated Denver. Now, I am sitting here now, and I was texting with a couple of my friends even the last few hours, and I said, I don't think Denver is completely dead yet with Jokic, although Murray he doesn't look like himself. I just have too much faith, I guess, in Jokic to be able to turn things around. But Minnesota looks unbelievable. And then, Gobert didn't even play.
I know.
Crazy.
I mean, he didn't even play. I would say this. Having watched what we've seen, it's still, as great as Anthony Edwards has been and as solid as Towns has looked at times, it's still difficult for me to believe that a team that is this young can put it all together to a point where they just clean house and knock everybody out and win a title this year. Usually, history tells us that it takes at least a year or two for a team to play like this in the postseason. To me, I would still take Boston. But that's only because Boston has been there 3 or 4 different times at this point, and you think, all right, it's finally Tatum's time to lift them through. But with the way Minnesota is playing, and I say this as somebody who just didn't think that Towns could continue to raise the level of his own game the way that he has, they deserve all the credit. And more than anything else, this is a fan. It's fun to watch Edwards play. It's fun to see him. So they have to be feeling great about where they're at. I think Boston just has a little bit of an edge still based on what they've done in the postseasons before.
I can't wait to see it. I think Minnesota matches up very well with them, but I respect your opinion, Nick. Real quick, Orlando, you're down there. You're from there. What is it chatter? Are they ready to roll out the red carpet and get all the yachts out there on the coast? And I know Orlando's in Central Florida, but get Mickey Mouse and Harry Potter at the airport.
Some astronauts.
For Klay Thompson. Are they ready to put on a full court press for Klay Thompson, Nick?
You know what cracks me up is, and we've been hearing about the Orlando chatter with Klay for months.
It's
obviously not new. This is not a new thing.
Right.
Hey, the Magic have space, and Klay might like it here, and he's an older guy with a younger team. It fits on so many levels. The thing that makes me laugh as a true Orlando native is knowing Klay the little bit that I know him, having covered that team for a few years. I think he would love Orlando on a personal level. And as we know with Klay, that's part of his persona. Let me hop in my boat. I don't think he's not taking that boat down to practice like he does with the Warriors in the Bay, but he can leave practice, be at his house in 15 minutes on a lake somewhere and just drive around and live the dream out there. The reason I'm hesitant on the Magic and Klay marriage is only because I'm curious to see what the price point would be.
Right.
On a basketball level, it makes a hell of a lot of sense. On a personal level for Klay, it makes a hell of a lot of sense. But I'm balancing that against Lacob and Klay both saying, they want to stay there. They want him to stay there forever and ever. The relationship that Klay has certainly with Steph and Draymond and being one of the faces of the golden era team that we all have seen for so long. And look, everybody loves Klay, but, and it's a very big but, are you willing to pay Klay big money for what you see moving forward?
Right.
Because what we've seen, and you guys watch it day to day, as close as anybody, he's just not. It's not even like, it's not the same Klay Thompson. He's just not a very consistent player at this stage. You just don't know what you're going to get. There's still very high highs, but there are too many low lows. On a basketball level, though, for a young team that needs shooting, that needs leadership, that needs a guy to come in, that all those younger guys are going to look at and respect, it does make sense. But I wouldn't cross the line and say, all right, I expect it to happen in a couple months, just because I don't think the Magic, who have built this team very carefully, finally, with all these draft picks that they've built in a culture that they love, are going to just throw all kinds of crazy money at Klay Thompson at this stage of his career, unless they think that he's the best option and there aren't other options left.
Maybe Malik Monk. Maybe Malik Monk, Nick. Maybe Malik Monk running the team.
See, that's the name to me that I would keep just as close of an eye on, because I think Monk, with the way he can score and with the way he fits in, that would help them immensely. I would only say this, having been around the Magic a fair amount the last couple seasons, they are huge on culture.
Yep.
And I've watched Klay, really closely these last few years. I know what he can do to a room when he's locked in and he wants to help the younger guys. I remember talking to Wiseman about Klay, and Wiseman just singing his praises about how he took him out on the boat and he was trying to build up his confidence. So I think that all plays into it. But I'd say the Magic, more than most teams, they want guys who fit what they've already built, especially with the success that Banchero and that group has started to have now. I think Klay would fit, but depending again on the price point, I think Monk may fit a little bit better.
Yep.
So all things being equal, Nick, if this is the last time we've seen Klay Thompson in a Golden State Warriors uniform, is it more likely that Klay Thompson moves off of the Golden State Warriors or the Warriors move off of Klay Thompson?
I think if we were on the seesaw percentage-wise, Don, I would say that it's Klay who finally moves off the Warriors, because if you've got your crystal ball, you're looking ahead to what's coming in the next couple months in the future, and you're saying, okay, Klay is beloved in the Bay. There are so many people in that organization, and you live it every day. Like, they love Klay, but do they want to pay Klay the same way? And again, I'm not saying that I know Klay extraordinarily well, but I like to think I have a good read on his personality. And I think if the Warriors come with an offer that he doesn't feel is befitting for him at this stage of his career, given what he's done, it just wouldn't surprise me if a team, whether it's Orlando or somebody else, comes in with a lot more money and says, hey, Klay, a change of scenery would be great for you. You can help the young group that we have in place, and you can start to reinvent yourself and your game in a place that really wants you. And that's always my question with Klay and the Warriors and their future. Klay is beloved, but he's beloved for what happened before. All these years leading up to all this time, but then the injuries happened, and it was awful, and he's built his way back. But I just don't know if the Warriors, and specifically the money that they will value him at price point wise, is going to be the same as another one of these teams that says we can get the most out of Klay Thompson and he can help our young group. It just doesn't feel like a fit the same way that it would for a Steph or a Draymond. But B and Spadone, the key, and I think it is crucial in these next couple months, is just how close is that relationship still between Klay and Joe Lacob. Because Joe Lacob flatly has said repeatedly to me and several other people over time, Klay is never leaving. I always want Klay to be here. Yeah. So if it's a question of money between Orlando and Golden State, or Golden State and some other team, at what point does Joe Lacob say, hey, Klay has given everything to us.
Right. We
don't want him to ever wear another jersey. Let's get it closer to even up, and let's force him to make the choice if he really does want to leave. So that's the relationship to keep in mind to me as you're trying to add up where he may or may not go. I just know that the relationship between those two guys has always been very, very solid. And I still, as much as the speculation has already started, I would be a little bit surprised if Klay were anywhere other than in the Bay when next season starts.
Real quick, Nick, we're up against it here. 30 seconds or less. Does Philadelphia fit into the equation with Klay Thompson, or is that a market that you just don't see Klay Thompson going to? It's a little rougher out there in Philadelphia. You know, we've had our experiences here on the Morning Roast in Philadelphia. How would that fly? Because they're going to have about $65 million in cap space.
B, I don't see it.
Yeah, I hear you.
I don't see it because if you're Klay, and not only do you love to be by the water and all that stuff, if you're Klay and you have that first 3 for 15 game and Philly is booing the living you-know-what out of him, how's he going to respond in a situation where he very clearly on that team would not be anywhere close to the guy? So, hey, it's all possible. We've seen crazier things in the NBA, but again, from a fit standpoint, the team that would make a lot of sense for a variety of reasons is the Magic. And I am just as curious as anybody else to see how it plays out in these next couple months and what he ends up deciding.
This is going to be one chaotic offseason. It's reminding me of the 2019 offseason when all those guys are on the move. Kevin Durant, Kawhi Leonard, Paul George getting traded. It feels like that offseason coming up for the NBA. Should be a fascinating time. Nick, we'll catch up before the playoffs are over. Minnesota, I'm banking on them to win this championship, man. I think they match up well, but we shall see. But what a surprise. Out with the old, in with the new. The new babies in the NBA, SGA, Anthony Edwards and company are taking over this league, man. It's been fun to watch. Nick, always fun to talk to you, brother.
Thanks,
Take
Nick.
care.
Guys, I miss you, and it's great to hear y'all's voices. I'll talk to you soon.
Absolutely, Nick. We love you too, man. We miss you, man. Cousin Nick here on the Morning Roast on 95.7 The Game. One of my favorites, man. Just a good all-around guy. He's tapped in with Orlando. What is going on with Klay Thompson? Let's go to Samita real quick before we recap the Cousin Nick. Samita, Los Gatos. What's happening, Samita?
What's up, Samita?
Hey, guys.
Hey, guys. Good morning.